Pearl Harbor, a tragic accident. Or was it? Have you ever wondered about something, an event, about why this happened? Was it even real? Was it an accident? Or was it a conspiracy? The Japanese launched in total 22 boats and 406 planes. With 22 massive boats, including aircraft carriers, destroyers, and battleships, how would anyone not notice 22 massive ships leaving a bay? The American spies were watching the bay and didn't even notice them. Or did they? They could have seen the ships, but they didn't do anything, because the president wanted America into the war. This is the conspiracy of Pearl Harbor. America didn't worry about a surprise attack from Japan. Who would? It's about 4,000 miles away, and they thought they couldn't reach them. Instead, they worried about sabotage. But really, they knew that the Japanese could go that far, but they let them go that far in order to get America into the war. One day, in the morning on Sunday, December 7th, two operators were operating the radar at Pearl Harbor, George and Joe. This is George's story. According to the dailybeast.com, the radar unit at WH2 Point had recently been installed, and they were only to operate it from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. On December 7th, they received an order to shut it down early at 6:54 a.m., but George, who had a little experience and desired more, kept it running, and at 7:02, he picked up an enormous blip from about 137 miles from the north. According to George, Joe expressed no interest in this discovery and was more interested in getting breakfast. Regardless, George insisted that it be reported, and Joe agreed that George could telephone the information center 50 miles away at Fort Shafter. He left a message with the operator, and at 7:20, the lieutenant on duty called back and told Joe that the blip was a dozen B-17 bombers flying in from San Francisco. This is interesting because they didn't even take precautions. Even if it were a dozen B-17 bombers and not a bunch of Japanese planes, it doesn't hurt to take precautions. Also, the lieutenant said not to worry about it, so maybe he knew about America getting into the war. They said to shut it down early, but maybe that was just because if the operators saw the blip, they would warn everybody and that would blow their plan. America also didn't load any of the planes with ammunition because they thought the Japanese were going to sabotage the planes, when really, they said that so the Japanese could get into Pearl Harbor without any damage. There was a Japanese message that the Americans intercepted, and it took a long time to decode the message. Then, they didn't even think it mattered to Pearl Harbor, but they sent it anyway, but it didn't arrive until after the start of the attack. This is suspicious because it got there right after the attack started. Because they didn't call them, they telegrammed it instead. But maybe they meant to do that. Is it a coincidence that the Japanese didn't lose that many men or planes? No, they didn't lose a lot of men because America took out all their ammunitions on purpose because they knew the sailors would try and fight back against the Japanese, which supposedly they did, but maybe they might have put that in the newspaper to make people think they did. One guy even supposedly threw an orange at the Japanese planes. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Why would the Americans let the Japanese kill 2,400 people and sink or damage 20 ships? Of those 20 ships, though, there were 8 battleships that were damaged or destroyed. But of those 8, 6 of them were repaired. Also, the oil tanks, repair shops, shipyards, and submarine docks weren't damaged at all. Coincidence? I think not. Also, aircraft carriers mattered more than battleships or destroyers, and they were out of the harbor that day. This allowed the Navy to bounce back relatively quickly, which is not a coincidence. Of those 2,400 men that were lost, though, I do not know why this happened. It is very horrific and tragic. One of these stories was even about the USS Arizona, which wasn't recovered. It was flipped over, leaving about 1,000 soldiers trapped in the ship, left to die and suffocate.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific.
This conspiracy isn't real, but it makes you think about how unlucky America was to have so many things that happened in Japan's favor and they didn't even know it. Today, I hope that you remember every December 7th, those 2,403 men that couldn't live their lives to the fullest.